Well, we continue with the broadcast on this Friday morning at 8:28 a.m. and we are talking about Saudi Arabia. We're talking about Vision 2030, and we know that there are going to be huge developments, changes in Saudi Arabia, taking another direction, and that includes sports. And we've seen Saudi Arabia featuring a lot more prominently as far as the sporting world is concerned. We know in the United Kingdom, we know Newcastle United, the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund currently owns the club, and we've seen what a difference this has actually made to the club in terms of the investment in the club and the performance of the club, but also looking at how Saudi Arabia has been gambling with the likes of superstars. We know what has happened with Ronaldo in Saudi Arabia, but also in terms of just ownership of the football clubs in Saudi Arabia. And this is the reason why we are talking with football journalist Mpho Mutloane and just begging the question, looking at Saudi Arabia and its position as a new footballing powerhouse. Mpho, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Anaya. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Vision 2030 has actually changed a lot for Saudi Arabia in terms
Mm,
of them changing direction and looking at the sporting world in particular. Now, we know sports right across the entire world is huge, it's massive, and soccer in a particular. And this is huge interest in football and soccer coming out of Saudi Arabia. I mentioned Newcastle United, which is
mm.
just one example, the huge investment in somebody, a player of stature of Ronaldo, but just so much happening in Saudi Arabia at the moment.
Yes, a lot has been happening in Saudi Arabia at the moment. They are, as you mentioned, Vision 2030 looking to transform, diversify their economy, also modernize their economy. And sport is one way of bridging that gap in bringing the diversity, also as well as modernizing. Prior to obviously the Newcastle investment, you also had Lionel Messi before the World Cup actually becoming an ambassador of Saudi Arabia as well, which was a massive thing for them. But also, you know the investments that they're doing in golf, and obviously the news that came out this week in golf. And then what also came out this week from a football perspective is they're looking to become the next biggest football powerhouse outside of Europe. And they're trying to do that in a way by attracting all the world's greatest stars. They currently have this week, along with the news of the investments, the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Forum investing in four teams, two in Jeddah and two in Riyadh. On top of that, that's enabled Al Ittihad, who are one of those four teams who got an investment in signing the current Ballon d'Or, the best player in the world, recipient, that is Karim Benzema out of Real Madrid. We're going to be seeing a lot more players moving inside Arabia in order to elevate the league. Currently, their league is ranked about 58th in the world in terms of the strength of their league. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get into the top 10. And it's not the first time we've seen this around the world, but I don't think we've ever seen it with this scale of investment. On top of the Public Investment Forum investing in four teams, Saudi Aramco, also has invested in a team in the oil region, and then as well as there's a new team in Neom that's also got an investment as well. And largely out of that, they're trying to strengthen the league, trying to be able to get the best players in the world to come to Saudi Arabia. And in turn, you'll get tourism flowing through, you'll get broadcasters wanting to broadcast this, and that brings in money into the league, and that elevates the stature of the league. What and it's this has been systematic over the past couple of years. They've increased their foreign quota for foreign players in a team from initially when it started it was three, it moved to five, and then it moved to seven, and now it's at eight. Which means even in the Saudi Premier League, you can have a team with only three Saudi nationals inside. And to a certain extent, that speaks to their ambition as to going through. But we obviously, this is part of Vision 2030, as you've mentioned. We've seen with the F1 what it's done. We've seen what it's done with Newcastle in terms of the investment. We've seen with the golf, and we're also looking forward to what that's going to happen. But now this is probably the pièce de résistance of all of this, in terms of a sporting perspective, because if they can get the Saudi league going really well and they can attract the best players in the world, then the Saudi league is going to be in the top 10 leagues in the world and probably even competing with those that are in Europe. And that's essentially what they're trying to do. And there's also possibility that in 2030 or 2034, that World Cup, the FIFA World Cup, will be held in Saudi Arabia. They're going to be hosting the Asian Women's Championship in 2026. They're looking to bid for the Asian Men's Championship in 2027, and they're looking to bring the world to Saudi Arabia. And that's that for me. That is partly what's been happening this week in them trying to then privatize their football teams and getting all this investment in and elevating the top end of that league in order to then attract media broadcasting and further investment into the league.
Well, tell you, Mpho, what you're saying is there is a long-term plan as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, and you make mention of either the 2030 or 2034 World Cup, and Saudi Arabia have seen what has played out in Qatar at the
Mm-hmm.
last FIFA World Cup, and I'm sure that they've taken note of the achievements as far as Qatar is concerned, which was one of the best World Cup tournaments ever held, and this is where they are taking the cue that there is huge opportunity, uh, both from a credibility perspective, because I think this is very, very important as well. You know, looking at how the world actually sometimes views the Arab world, and this is a statement that Saudi Arabia is going to make, and they're going to pull out all stops to make sure that they achieve whatever they set out to achieve on the sporting front and on the footballing front in particular.
Yes, and sport is one of the easier ways to change those perceptions that the rest of the world have, to try and let the world know that no, Saudi Arabia is open, Saudi Arabia is a beautiful country, and everyone should come to. And that's what Qatar did with the World Cup. It opened up the world to the Arab nations to say that this is what we are, this is what we can produce, the best stadiums in the world, the best football tournament you've ever seen. And Saudi Arabia, looking at that, and the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman looking at that, thinking about it, had already started this project in trying to get all the other sports in and being involved in all the other sports. Soccer was the last one, I think. There may be a few more after this, but it's a long-term play, as I've said earlier. And if Saudi, and I wouldn't be surprised if Saudi Arabia got to host a World Cup either 2030 or 2034, based off of this and also the investments. The question obviously now is, can they get the best players in the world? And there is a market there. Similar to what Newcastle did, right, with the investment in Newcastle. And I think a lot of the teams in the Saudi Pro League are going to use the same model, right? It's a situation of, yes, you may not be able to attract the top 50 in the world, but after that, you can still attract name players who are still good enough, who've maybe made a name for themselves in the leagues around Europe, have a fan following, and in that fan following, bringing them in. Players like N'Golo Kante, who's a World Cup winner with France and also a Champions League winner with Chelsea. He's been rumored to be moving to Al Ittihad to follow Karim Benzema. Last night we had Karim Benzema's release. What was it? A reveal to the fans in at the Al Ittihad Stadium. And to a certain extent, you're going to see a lot more. Ronaldo's still there. Ronaldo's now moved Al Nasri to being one of the most top followed football teams in the world. And you want that intrigue. You want media broadcasters to come through, and in that, it'll open up the tourism. It'll bring in the sporting revenue, diversify the economy, and they're getting very close to achieving Vision 2030, which I think is amazing. It's just obviously how do you is getting the world's best players to come in. They've already gotten Karim Benzema. They already have Cristiano Ronaldo. They're probably going to get N'Golo Kante. Can they get more players of that stature? And if they do, then that will happen. Obviously, there were rumors about Lionel Messi. He chose to go to Inter Miami. But if they had gotten Lionel Messi, the eyes of the footballing world would have shifted all the way to Riyadh. And that would have been probably an amazing thing. But it doesn't stop there. This league is here to stay. And we've seen certain similar type of attempts China tried to do this in the late 90s. USA also tried to do this in the 70s, trying to get the best players in the world, the Pelés, the George Bests, to come in and elevate their game. China tried to do that as well. Have you seen with a lot of the players in the early 2000s, late 2010s? That didn't work out well. China stopped. I don't think Saudi Arabia is going to stop in this. I think they're going to try and push this even further to become a powerhouse. And many people are saying it's going to become a retirement village for some of the world's best players. For now, in 3, 4, 5 years' time, that's going to change. You'll start getting some of the best players in the world, the best talents in the world coming out of the Saudi Pro League, or players wanting to go play in the Saudi Pro League and make a name for themselves. So it's really good to watch a different sporting business model, a little bit of a disruptor to the conventional way of doing things. And I think the world should be excited for it, because you then get a little bit of variety coming out of a place in the world where many people are still interested in finding out more about the culture and the ways. And I think having a player like Karim Benzema is going to go a long way in opening up the doors with Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yes, and also I think what is important and what is interesting to note is the state has got a direct involvement in
Mm,
all these initiatives. Unlike many clubs around the world, you would find that individuals that own these clubs, this is a state initiative through the Public Investment Fund in Saudi Arabia, even taking ownership of the clubs. So this is
mm.
extremely important, and this is actually also tells us as to how serious the country is as a government, how serious they are about these developments.
Yes, and the interesting thing was previously, before this announcement, all football clubs in Saudi Arabia were run by the state, were held by the state. What they're trying to do now is trying to privatize a little bit more, and the Public Investment Fund led with that, and they are the big arm. They are the big investment arm for Saudi Arabia, and they decided to invest in 4 clubs. There are some clubs like Al Shabaab who missed out on that investment, and their fans are not happy right now. But it's enabled the elevation of the league, because if you invest in the top of the league, the rest will follow, and we're going to see more investment, probably from the West, coming into Saudi Arabia, as more people, if this as this league grows, as more oligarchs, as more billionaires want to have a stake in this league come through. And to a certain extent, what the Public Investment Fund has done is that they've led the way, they've opened up the way. And if this league, the business model works out and it proves to be profitable, more investment will be coming into the Saudi league. And that's a beautiful way of diversifying the economy, being led by the government and being led by the state. And so that's the final intention of Vision 2030, is to have a similar model to what's happening in England, where you get multiple different owners from different nationalities purchasing clubs. Right now, we've got 6 investments, 4 from the Public Investment Fund, 1 from Aramco, and the last one was for the team in Niom. That team's in the second division right now, but they are getting a very healthy investment from a company in that region, a tech company in that region, and they're hoping that more clubs will get that type of investment, and that's going to get the ball rolling a lot better. And the Saudi league is going to become a powerhouse, and possibly even a power. Well, it's going to become a powerhouse of Asian football in the next year or so, but then a powerhouse of world football by the time we get to 2030.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to all of that with interest and Paul. Thank you very much for that, for unpacking what you have this morning. And we wish you well. Please take care. And once again, appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Football journalist Mpho Mutloane with us this morning, taking a look at Saudi Arabia and where Saudi Arabia is going to take this country in terms of Vision 2030 and looking at it from a sporting perspective. We're going to go for a break, and when we come back, we will be playing out an interview that we had done with Dr. Fauzia Siddiqui last night. And I must say, 40 minutes where Dr. Fauzia actually kept me riveted. The meeting, her first meeting with her sister, 20 years down the line. And this was such a personal interview where Dr. Fauzia actually spoke from the heart. And for me, particularly, at the time, and the question I had raised to Dr. Fawzia Siddiqui is, can someone be actually prepared after 20 years struggling to seek the freedom of your sister, and you're playing this in your mind over and over again? What will I do? How will I react when I see my sister? And all of that actually came to the fore. So for about 10 minutes, we're going to play out the snippet with the interview with Dr. Fawzia Siddiqui. But if you need to, the full interview is on our social media platforms, on our Facebook page, and also on our YouTube channel. So you can view the full interview, which was around 40 minutes long, that had taken last night with myself, with Dr. Fawzia Siddiqui.